Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Rangers Review Extra, our tactics podcast, where we have the fun job of speaking about Rangers' tactical approach. Adam Thornton, no better game to dissect than Celtic 3, Rangers 0, another Old Firm defeat for Rangers. Going to try and speak a little bit about what went wrong this time for Rangers, why we've seen it before, etc., 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 and try and give a little bit more context as to what was witnessed when Rangers were lost again in an Old Firm game at the weekend. But Adam, briefly, as we enter this podcast, this was supposed to be a fun little side podcast we can do, and we've so far had a couple of decent games, but that wasn't great at the weekend from a Rangers point of view. And yeah, as we will get into a lot of goals conceded and that we've seen before, and I guess a game that in many senses it feels like we've seen before as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think I was under no illusions that this podcast probably wouldn't be fun every week. But having done something similar on Heart and Hand for a good few years, it can be quite cathartic. I'm not sure we're really in a cathartic state of mind given the situation just now, so it will be very much picking through the bones of, yeah, like you said, another horrendous Old Firm showing. It As a kind of high line for me, it just completely baffles me how we're making these same mistakes for 3 years on the spin, pretty much every single game. When you think about the turnover of players in that time, and the amount of money spent on the squad in that time, it's baffling to me, and this is why I didn't accept at the end of last year, sort of spring, April, May time, didn't accept, once the manager gets his own players in, things will be different, because it hasn't been different. We've had three separate managers. We've spent about £50 million in those 3 years, probably. To sort of get to where we are just now, with similar mistakes, similar goals being conceded, brand new team, essentially. Other than Tavernier, I think there was a thing out the other day that once Scott Wright left, he was the only surviving member of the Europa League final team there, and I don't know how many more changes to the squad. So it is just baffling to me that the same mistakes can be happening with the second round of brand new players, with all the money spent with under three different managers. I don't know what the answer is, but we can certainly try and dig into what went wrong in this one.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, since you're starting big picture because we're going to talk about what Rangers did well for 10 minutes, and then what went wrong from there, and break down a few of the kind of tactical elements of the game. I'll read out some stats to cheer you up further before we get into it. Last 16 Old Firm games since Steven Gerrard left, Rangers have won 2 of them. One was a 3-0 game when the league was gone. One was a Scottish Cup semi-final win in extra time. That's 11 defeats and 3 draws within that time as well. Clement now obviously has lost 4 of 5 Old Firm games. To kick us off, Adam, I want to show you, actually, before we get into a little bit more about this Old Firm in isolation, I want to show you, and as ever, for people watching, we're going to just pull up GIFs and stop them at different intervening periods when we see fit. This is what stood out. This is what stood out to me, and I thought was quite a good description of why Rangers are here. Why do they keep losing this game in similar fashion under previous managers? And we'll get on to whether they deserve this defeat, because I thought there's been some games in the past where it has been fine margins and Celtic have had a better finisher, or they've had more confidence, which has got them over the line. I don't think this game was that story. I think it was quite a clear gulf between the two teams. You see, if you watch Celtic's first goal, and this isn't the exact throw-in, but it came from a throw-in, a quick rotation down the side, Rangers man marking approach pulled apart when it sat deep again. You've effectively got a goal coming from a throw-in, a ball down the side, a cutback, a well-worked goal that Celtic score all the time. This is the 2 screenshots from the Maeda goal. See if you cast your mind back this time 2 years ago when Rangers got beat 4-0 by Celtic to also go 5 points behind going into the first international break. It was under Giovanni Van Bronckhorst then. I just thought this goal, watching it back, the Abada goal, was an absolute copy and paste from the other side of the pitch. A Matt O'Reilly cross, I think, from a quick throw-in. You can see Ryan Kent's got his arms out. They're complaining to the referee, and this was a game where Rangers were really slow from restarts, but the ball is converted at the back post. It's just that mirror image, the other side, a cross a cut-back cross on the left in this instance to a wide forward on the right, pulling off the fullback. This time round, it was the other way around. We're talking about why Rangers are here, Adam, why they're back here, why they're in the same situation. Celtic have done the same thing for a number of years. They've not really changed their style between managers. They had a bad recruitment last summer, but they managed to get away with it. Between this game that I'm showing here, which is the 4-0 game under Van Bronckhorst, to the Clermont game, within 2 years, Rangers have changed their style of play. You know, they've went back to Michael Beale and then back to Clermont. They've changed who's in charge of their recruitment. They've been recruiting for different styles. All the while, Celtic have been doing the same thing. And, you know, if you were to compare and contrast it, can you imagine if, say, Maeda, if Celtic had hired, instead of Postecoglou, had hired a coach who used a game model that had narrow number 10s and high and aggressive fullbacks, and you put Maeda as maybe a narrow number 10 with his back to goal, it wouldn't work as well because he wasn't recruited for that position. So do you know what I mean? Do you think that's I guess just to kick us off, that maybe gives a bit of context to this, then, a very literal sense. There's 2 goals that Rangers have conceded in this fixture over the span of 2 years, and you look at what the two teams, just from a footballing point of view, have done. The reason Celtic look so comfortable in this fixture is because they've scored these type of goals for so long, whereas Rangers have changed their approach so much and have not had anywhere near that consistency in that same time period.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it comes down to repetition, like you said, albeit when Brendan Rodgers was there before, certainly his first couple of seasons, it was slightly different to what Postecoglou was doing, and then what Rodgers is doing now is probably more like Postecoglou and slightly different to what came before. But he's, I guess, recognised that that's what this squad is good at, and tried to build on it, whereas we haven't quite had that. And I think that is a big issue, because it's that repetition. I think that's a big thing. Those repeatable movements, the same quick throw-ins. You know this player is going to be here. You know that player is going to go there. You know this player is quicker than that player. And you can build a picture in your head of what's going to happen. They've been doing it now for 50, 100, 150 games. You can see that. That's been my big issue for Rangers over the last 3 years, is lack of continuity, lack of continuity in team selection, lack of continuity when players are being recruited, lack of continuity in every attack. How often have we sat and it's been the fullback's getting the ball deep, someone's tucked in, Barisic tucked in, and he's having to build for whatever reason, or then Barisic is high and he's actually the overloading guy and on that side, or Bassi's playing or Yilmaz is playing and they go on the inside and try and attack through the half spaces. Just all fundamentally different ways of playing football. No plan to it. Just, we've bought some players that we think might be quite good, are affordable, want to come here. Let's worry about putting them into a team later, which can work. I think that can work. However, you need a manager who does that. You need a manager who has a clear way of playing, and that could be ranging from Derek McInnes' way of playing to Ange Postecoglou's way of playing. You just need something. You need a plan. It might not be something you agree with. I did not agree with Walter Smith's plan for large portions of his second spell back at Rangers. I thought we maybe were a little bit overly defensive and didn't really create enough chances, relied too much on physicality, but it's a plan. It's something to get behind, and you can sort of see, if you see what the picture is and it's successful, nobody cares. Whereas just now, there isn't a huge amount of continuity. There are little bits of Clermont that you can say, okay, he likes to do this, he likes to do that, but it changes so much. Last season, the optimists said it was only changing because of the injuries. This season, there isn't a huge amount of difference with different players, which is a worrying thing. It was the same the season before, when Michael Beale would say towards the end of that season, you're going to have to wait until I get the players in. You're going to have to wait until I do this. This is what we're working with just now. And then we got past the summer and it actually ended up worse for some bizarre reason. So it's that lack of continuity. It's that lack of clarity of here's how we play football that I think is the biggest issue for Rangers. And it just sort of crystallises in these games because you've got another team who know exactly what they are, who know exactly how they play, and they know exactly where to attack you.
Yeah, okay, right. Let's look at this game in isolation then. Philippe Clement said after, I'll pull up the race chart, which just shows the expected goals from the game and how that kind of played out. Each indent is a shot. The higher the indent, the higher the quality of effort. Clement said after the game, Adam, Celtic had 14 shots. We had 13. They had 4 on target. We had 4 on target, but you lose 3-0. There has been certain Old Firm games, and I've got a note of them here, where I think Rangers have been actually unlucky. So I'm thinking of the 3-2 game under Beale, where Morelos had that header chalked off, and it was a Ben Davies mistake and a John Souttar mistake, right? And I think James Tavernier scored twice that day. You had the 1-0 game under Beale in the Scottish Cup semi-final, where again it was a mistake leading to a goal. Fashion Sakala misses a bit of an open goal. In all these games, the expected goals may be slightly in Rangers' favour. Even the 2-1 game under Clement at Parkhead, when was that? Around last Christmas time, I thought Rangers were slightly unfortunate. They had the moment where Dessers went through one-on-one. They conceded to a set piece and a kind of a really good shot from distance from Kyogo, but again, didn't concede many in the way of chances. And the Scottish Cup final, again, pretty close. Celtic didn't have loads of opportunities. Rangers didn't have loads of opportunities. This game was not that for a number of reasons. Yes, the expected goals, as you can see here, and this is why expected goals is obviously a much better metric than shots on target. Celtic coming in at about 2 and Rangers 1.28. But if you look at where the expected goals sat, the game state when Celtic were 3-0 up, it was 2.04 to 0.69. So Rangers have almost doubled their expected goals tally with a few late chances. Celtic are 3-0 up. By the time they're 3-0 up, the game's done. By the time they're 3-0 up, Rodgers brings on new players and the tempo is kind of taken out of the match. So I guess just briefly, first and foremost, certainly to my eyes, once you look at that first indent Rangers have around 10 minutes, that Ravi Matondo chance, that's your moment you need to score in, because we know that Celtic so regularly score the first goal in this fixture. Thereafter, I didn't think this was a game where you could look at the end and say, oh yeah, Celtic might have had this number of shots, but Rangers had this number of shots. You can see from the data, it was only when the game went 3-0 that it started to really, I would say, become something of a contest again.
And that's the theme, and that's why game state is such a huge thing that people don't take into account. You're watching the game, you get into it, you might think at the end, oh, we had a couple of late chances, it could have been this on another day. We've all done it. But seeing something like this laid out, it does become quite stark that second goal for Celtic, like you said, puts them out of sight in terms of quality of chances. And I think that's the big thing. Yes, you can have a number of chances. I challenge anybody to watch how Cyril Dessler strikes a ball versus how Kyogo strikes a ball and tell me that all chances are equal, because it's not valid. That's why expected goals are so crucial, I think, to dictating what the quality of a player is versus the chance they get versus how often they score it. And I think you're spot on. There's no doubt in my mind that people watching these games and they say, oh, we had a couple of chances late on, you can see it here. Oh, look, Rangers had so many more chances after the hour mark. Yes, because they let you do that. That's how this works. Celtic
game's done by that point, isn't it?
Yeah. Celtic go 2-0 up in this fixture and we'll just say, right, sit back, rest players, bring on players for a debut. Going to sit back. They can't break us down. If they can break us down through sheer luck, it'll be one goal. We might be able to go and score another on the break. It is game state. Everything is game state. No one is suggesting that this game was close other than the manager, which is obviously a bit of a face-saving thing and probably using stats in a way that is quite disingenuous. But I can understand you want to protect your team. It does sound a bit ridiculous when you watch the game and you see something like this. So I think it's really important to understand when a game is finished. And I know every game goes to the last kick of the ball. That's fine. Again, I challenge anybody watching to think that when it went to 2-0, Rangers were going to get anything out of that game. You know what you're watching. Celtic players will have known what was happening, and they'd be quite happy sitting back, letting Rangers play in front of them, picking us off on the break, which I think is the story of the last 3 years of Parkhead games, certainly.
Yeah, okay. Let's get into what Rangers did well, because for the first 10 minutes, Rangers were good, and then it totally kind of capitulated, I thought, after that, and Clement criticised his team's reaction when they went 1-0 down. So let's look firstly at what Rangers did on the ball to kind of create that Matondo chance, and I think the Dessers chance as well, which was offside, so isn't recorded on the Stats Bomb data. This GIF, which I'll play through a couple of times and then speak through, is how Rangers built play for that Matondo chance. building out for the back, side to side. They get the ball down the flank, and then the ball's cut back to Tavernier, who plays across into Matondo. A few things to highlight here. I've seen a few people take stills like this on Twitter and say, oh, Rangers centre-backs didn't know what to do on the ball. They're deliberately keeping the ball in these areas. If you look at the Celtic second line of four, the Rangers midfield and the fullbacks are really high deliberately to try and stretch them, to try and pin them back. So often in an Old Firm game, because of the intensity that front two press with, the Celtic front two, Rangers centre-backs haven't had the, I guess, comfort on the ball to build out and they shell it forward. And again, they've not, because Dessers isn't a hold-up player, I think it's quite restrictive because you're then struggling to get the ball up the pitch directly. So there was a lot of deliberate kind of baiting of pressure. Again, we only saw it for 10 minutes. Then you see Rangers trying to go side to side. Once they've, as you can see, the difference here is there's a bit more space because Rangers have circulated it around the back with Connor Barron dropping in. The ball goes to the side. Rangers are trying to build down the side instead of the middle because obviously it's a less dangerous area to lose the ball, as the second goal of the game demonstrated. The position of Dujon Sterling here is important for me because, again, this outlines a lot of what Clement wants to do. He wants his attackers high up the pitch. Sterling here is about to underlap, which is how Rangers break the line that Tavernier plays the ball over to get them into the final third. But here they've built play with the ball beyond the press. They then go to the right-hand side and go in behind. For me, Adam, that's fine. You can see what they're trying to do there. Circulate the ball to stretch the press, go side to side and go around. The difficulty was that when the game goes 1-0, as Clement said after it, the momentum shifts with the 1-0 and 2-0. Then Celtic only need to keep the ball and wait for the moments you step out to use the space. That creates a lot. I guess similar to what we'll talk about with how Rangers tried to press, Adam, this approach probably relied quite a lot on the game being 0-0 and Celtic actually going to press, because when they go 1-0 up, there isn't that urgency for them to go and press Rangers, and unlike the other way around, Rangers probably need Celtic to press them to play through. So I thought that was better for, again, 10 minutes than we've seen in recent Old Firm games, and it creates this opportunity, but obviously it went beyond the post from Matondo instead of into the net.
Yeah. I understand. I understand what you're saying. I think there's points of it that I don't agree with in terms of how we set it up, that I think we might have been a little bit naive, or we could have been a little bit braver. And see if can you go back to the first? I don't know how easy it is, but to go back to the first.
Yeah.
Yes. So I understand what you're saying here, but I think we need to think about what the opposition are doing, or I would be thinking about what the opposition are doing here. It's very risky for Celtic to set up in that way, with the four midfielders, or the second back, the bank of four, ahead of our players. I think that is quite risky, but you have to think about what they think we can do. They know we can't. They know we can't pass the ball through. They know we don't have any players to really do that. There's an option to bring that ball into Connor Barron, which is quite risky. John Souttar wouldn't play that pass. If he did play that pass, Connor Barron can't turn and play through the lines. So they know that. Therefore, this is a calculated risk, I think, to basically pen us in. I get that we're trying to break the press, but in reality, we can't really go anywhere with it. So I think that's really smart from Celtic, albeit I kind of get what you're saying. And then the other one is when Barron's on the ball on the
I'll play it
halfway
through.
line. This one. Again, Sterling to stretch, but again, this comes back to this fundamental issue I've got with Rangers. There's no one that can make that pass. There is no one that can make that pass. And even if they make that pass, Dujon Sterling can't do anything with it. He can't spin and play. That's just not his thing. So again, they know. For me, it's difficult because it's a screenshot in isolation. But if I'm looking at this right now, I either want Souttar to be 10 yards further forward to pick up a risky pass from Barron, which is a bit flatter, which is dangerous as well, putting a flat pass over there. But I want him to be a little bit further forward, or I want him to drive forward and then try and get that pass through to Dujon Sterling, who can't deal with it when it gets there. But that's by the by. That's what
I guess Adam, to come back on that, if maybe that, because there was the moment where Souttar drove through the pitch at one point, played it to Dessers, who played it back at Tavernier, and the chance is kind of gone. I think Clement probably recognises in a situation like this game, if you lose the ball in the centre, as Rangers did for the second goal, the risk is too high, because he needs his fullbacks to be high, because he needs to create space for his centre backs so they can build up. So I think he's trying to deliberately go around the sides. But again, I guess the issue is from there, it's more difficult to create chances.
I think that, yeah, completely agree. And the chance for Tavernier putting the ball in, I mean, that's fine. It's this issue that I've had with the fullbacks and the wide players for 2 years now, probably, in terms of mixing up the way that we play. It's great to get Tavernier into that space and ping the ball in, but we need to be a little bit more flexible about it. And I get that it is risky to do that, but for me, it's more risky because of the players that are playing, or because of the players that have been selected, or whatever you want to say there. It's more risky because we don't have the right level of quality in there to do those passes. If we did have a player in the middle, such as Stephen Davis, or we had someone box to box that could do what Dujon Sterling does, but also was able to bring the ball in, spin, and play it through, or beat a man, or anything like that in the middle of the park, then possibly you might see the manager doing it. So there's an element there of maybe being hamstrung by certain players that he doesn't have, albeit you'd hope some of them would have come in the summer there, given the amount that came in and the spend, versus maybe just that risk averseness that isn't ideal, because you've seen for the first goal, we certainly weren't risk averse. We pressed up quite recklessly, as far as I'm concerned, and leave those gaps anyway. So it's just about when the risk is a good one and when it's not, I think.
Yeah, fair. No, we're going to get into it. Let's get into the pressing then, because you're right. I think that's a very fair point. It's like, okay, maybe there's a risk of playing through the pitch, but what is the risk attributed to pressing man for man when you've not got pace at the back, right? So we're gonna get into the fun stuff. Let's first look at when Rangers did press well, because they did for the first 10 minutes. I thought they were aggressive and they were pressing on the front foot. As a disclaimer, I think the only time a man-for-man press against a variation of the Celtic side has worked when Rangers have had the Calvin Bassey, generally. Apart from that, Clement got the 3-3 draw. Rangers were better in that second half, but again, the first half I thought Celtic were far better. I'll just play us through a couple of times as well. This is just how Rangers press from goal kicks early, matching up man for man, trying to trap Celtic to one side of the pitch and winning the ball back high. This is when it worked well, Adam. So you've got a 3v2 here. We'll get on to Diomande and Dessers up against Callum McGregor and the whole how do you stop Callum McGregor from a Rangers point of view debate. See, if I stop this here, this is what Rangers wanted to create. They wanted to trap Scales to one side, limit his passing options. In this situation, I think Cherney's standing just in front of him. It's Diomande who the ball hits off, although Rangers aren't able to capitalise upon it. And that's, again, that they've not, in these moments, got the quality to capitalise on the upside of these pressing moments. But this shows that it did work for a little bit. You see, if I take the frame back to here, I think it's in this frame, you can see where Connor Barron is. And this comes into the whole pressing risk as well, because Rangers number 6 was going up to join a man-for-man press in the opposition half. Rangers were keeping a 4v3 at the back with 2 centre-backs on Celtic's, one forward and Kyogo, but it felt too often like the front half of the team was pressing and the second half was not. Now, if I take us in to before we talk about this overall, what went wrong, this is the lead up to the Kyogo offside goal. So Celtic have now moved the ball from side to side, and that just gives them a little bit more time to escape from the press on the side. Again, look at where Barron is here. That's your number 6. So that shows why that space in front of the defence isn't going to be defended at points. Celtic get through, Callum McGregor gets through and plays that ball, and it's just narrowly offside. If we just speak through this before I throw it back to you, Adam, this is the issue with the man-for-man press for me. Third-man combinations, and Celtic's third-man combinations are faster than Rangers pressing. Celtic are a better team at these third-man combinations than Rangers are pressing man-for-man. Here, the ball obviously goes into Johnson at right back. He just has a little bit of time to pick out the space. And this still, Rangers are on the front foot. They're the ones that are pressing. They're the ones that are aggressive. But Callum McGregor reads where the pass is going. He sees the pass is going to Hatate quicker than Diomande can. We'll talk about Diomande as well, because I think he's almost doing the job of 2 men at points, pressing at the top of the pitch. But these third-man combinations, whether it be in the build-up or down the sides, as we saw for the first goal, are just too quick for, I think, a man-for-man system to counter, which allows Celtic to escape. And then your space ahead of the defence isn't defended because your number 6 is pressing really high and aggressive, and your back four is staying in situ. It reminds me a little bit of watching Man United at points, when they have it feels like a lot of the front of their team press and the second half don't. So we saw how the press worked, and we saw how it didn't. Effectively, Celtic's third man, when they had a little bit more time on the ball, the third man combinations got them out. Was there not always a risk with this, Adam, that although it looked good for the first 10 minutes, was there not always a risk that it's so difficult to keep that up for 90 minutes? Because I don't think Rangers have the profile of team to beat Celtic in a running match over a 90-minute period, if that makes sense. How did you see those two things, when the press worked, but more specifically when it didn't?
Yeah, so I think it worked okay in that first 10 minutes, but it always felt like it was gonna fall flat. That still that we're on just now is embarrassing. Like, if I'm honest, that's how we can get two passes out of Celtic's right hand side of their box essentially, and have what's that, 5 players off behind the line of pressure, is just horrendous. And you could argue it comes down to an individual mistake to press high up the pitch. We've seen similar with John Lundstrom when he got sent off. Something reckless there. You can argue it might be a pressing trigger. I don't particularly think it is a pressing trigger. It's just someone going to gamble and try and win the ball back. But that is that risk that we spoke about. That breaks the structure completely in an already flimsy structure. So that's not great. However, like you said, when we were able to box it in the first 10 minutes into the sides, then fine. But when we weren't, we very much weren't. I know it's in vogue for everyone. I know there's an example there of Celtic doing the 2-man or the 4-4-2 out of possession with the press. But see the still that you had when they've broken through and the ball's coming to I'm not sure who it is, Paulo Bernardo possibly, on the far side.
Okay, what the frame before?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, let me go. I'll play it through, and you can tell me where to stop.
Yeah, this one, right?
Yeah.
So I don't like this either, because as we've spoken about with the Celtic example previously, all their players are ahead of the Celtic players. So that to me is less risky than where we are just now because of what you said. Celtic are much better man to man, much better combinations. They've got that repetition. They know where they're going to go. So I'm not a massive fan of the 2-man press. I'm certainly not a massive fan of it when it's Dessers and Cantwell, Dessers and Lawrence, Dessers and Diamandi, arguably better, but I just don't like it because they get through in this way, and they're always going to get through because it's 3 against 2 right away. They're always going to get through because they've got the 2 centre halves, Kasper Schmeichel as well, probably you can include in there as well, and Callum McGregor, they'll pass the ball through to them and they know he's not going to lose the ball. Back to the point about Connor Barron before, confidence, trust, ability to play through the lines. They know that's there. That is worth an extra man, really, in terms of pressing for me. So I don't like it. All I can keep going back to is how we pressed under Steven Gerrard in these games, and it was as a 3 out of possession. The 3 attackers would effectively, Morelos would pick a centre half, the 2 wingers would tie onto a fullback, and then you would encourage them to play through. Celtic had 3 in the middle, we had 3 in the middle, and it became more of a sort of individual battle in there. The way that we do this now, and the way that we have done this, certainly under Clement, we effectively either pull our wingers out of the game, or we constantly leave ourselves overloaded in the middle of the park, especially with Kyogo dropping deep.
Yeah,
the defenders don't tend to follow in that sense. So he can come in there and he can link play, giving them an extra man in there. It constantly feels that we have one less player, and for me, it's because of how we set it up. We're either too aggressive with it, or we're not as good at closing down and pressing as they are at the combinations. So that's for me why I would like to see more of a sort of lower to mid block, have a narrow 3 at the top and a narrow 3 behind it, and force Celtic wide. They will score goals. They did still score goals under Gerrard, but you're putting the players into the positions of the pitch that are less of an issue. We just spoke there about us creating chances from wide. Are we creating chances from wide, or are Celtic pushing us wide? Is always the eternal question there. For us, we let up far too many chances through the middle. We get balls through to get down the sides and then cut back. So yeah, I do think there were good points in it, but I don't
Yeah.
like this 4-4-2 press at all because it leaves us open to this.
I think so I guess from Clement's point of view, you'd probably look at this still here and you'd say, well, the press has created an upside early on, right? The build out for the back has created a chance early on, but Rangers haven't been able to exploit it, and that's a separate conversation. For me, the issue is more like, you see, if you take this frame here, and I'll realize this podcast is already going to be way too long, but we're in the midst of it. The big difference between to like a Gerrard or Beale system is it's zonal. It's not orientated around the man, it's orientated around the ball. And then obviously I think generally you'd assume that is less susceptible to being pulled out of position by players' runs, because instead of being at the mercy of where the players are, you're at the mercy of where the ball is. Now, again, Rangers didn't win many games under Beale against Celtic, but I do think the zonal system looks better. I think a 4-4, most teams now press like a zonal 4-4-2 system, and they jump into a man-to-man system. But the difficulty is, I think, when you jump in, again, if this is a Rangers press, when they've got Calvin Bassey in the team, he can jump up and confront McGregor. And while Proper, I think, can do that, and we spoke about that recently, he is more comfortable leaving the defence. He's maybe not quite quick enough to do it in this game. The issue then comes for me here, Adam, right? So we've discussed that. The issue is you can debate the validity of how Rangers man-to-man press looks when you're pressing high up the pitch, when you're pressing from goal kicks. A lot of teams do it, but then when they drop deeper, they sit so it's a hybrid system. They sit zonally. So when they're in their shape, when they're in the kind of mid block, when they're in the middle of the pitch, or they're protecting their box, they're not man for man. They're protecting the zone because of the risks associated with being man for man in those areas. Rangers don't really do that. It's hard to categorically say what their pressing system is deeper in the pitch. But if you look at how they're pulled apart at the first goal, at the throw-in, it's man for man rather than zonal. You're getting pulled apart man for man, which is slower than Celtic third man combinations, right? I'm going to play you this GIF now, which is the goal kicks. So this is the first goal kick the Celtic had on the day. Rangers are high and aggressive with their line of confrontation. Second goal kick, same again. Third goal kick, same again. Fourth goal kick, same again, right? This is a fifth goal kick. And that's after the Kyogo goal. So after the Kyogo offside goal, it's almost as if Rangers were like, oof, we better not do that because of the space in behind. And that's maybe understandable, but then that's where I think you're really right to highlight the risk of then sitting back in this block against a man, when you're in a man-for-man system, against this Celtic side, because from here, they're not really troubled. From here, you're going to struggle to press them into a mistake, because then they've always got that free pass, don't they?
Yep, and it is understandable, but with the greatest respect, it's not for the players to decide what's understandable and what isn't. It's for the manager to, here's the game plan, let's stick to it. Here's the game plan regardless. That offside goal might spook you. That's absolutely fine. You can't let it. It's not.
Maybe it came from the side. We don't know, but I'd be surprised if it did. But it felt very clear watching the game that okay, right now Rangers are dropping deeper after that goal.
So the issue then is, you drop deeper, and then to your point, I completely agree. At points it's zonal, at points it's man marking. I think the two main issues, certainly for me in this game and many games, are not huge amounts to do with tactics, and I appreciate that might be the wrong show here. But you mentioned Calvin Bassey a lot there, and the only reason that Calvin Bassey I think is relevant here is because he's probably the last Rangers player I can remember that could dominate his man 1v1. We don't have anyone that can do that, and I think that's the issue. Again, that still that you gave us of when they finally got through for McGregor for the offside goal, that's fine. Teams are going to get through, especially good teams like Celtic that do this repetition. You're going to make mistakes. The issue that Rangers have got, and that's why every goal has several points of failure for Rangers, is the issue is when an attacking Celtic player gets 1v1 with a Rangers player in Rangers half, there is no confidence that the Rangers player can overcome them physically. They're probably quicker. They move more intelligently. They'll play the ball quicker. All of that transcends the sort of physical dominance that you would think Rangers would have over quite small forwards. So Rangers are not able to dominate 1v1. Don't just mean physically, I mean on every possible level. That just doesn't happen. So when you break through, you're always at a disadvantage. Even if it's man for man, even if Celtic have one less player, you're always at a disadvantage. And I think we see that time and time again. Tavernier can't handle Maida's pace, has never been able to handle Maida's pace. If you want to keep playing Tavernier, you need to have an insurance policy there. That's just basic facts. It's always been the case. Daniel Candeias, Ryan Jack, there's absolutely no surprises as to why you've seen some of the form that you did there, because you've got someone there who is supplementing. For me, a tactical plan is limit the weaknesses as best you can and accentuate the strengths. And I don't think we do that. And I think it is to do with some of these mistakes that we've made here, but it's more for me to do with the lack of 1v1s defensively that we can dominate. The midfield can't dominate the midfielders, but attackers certainly can't dominate Celtic's defence. And I think it's the same further back as well. So that's a big issue for me. The second issue is probably a bit more basic than that, is for as long as I've been watching Old Firm games, the first goal is crucial. I don't know when Rangers got the first goal. It's probably as far back as 3 years ago, as we spoke about. The Cyril Dessler's chance, you can say, oh, but he did this, and I bet he did this, and I bet he did that. So I don't care. There's no excuse, no valid excuse for being offside at that shot, and no valid excuse for the chance that you muster as well. It's just inexcusable. If that does happen, then the game plan switches, like you say, and maybe we do sit back and be a bit more hard to beat. We've got Matondo on one side that we can start shelling balls to. We don't know. We'll never know, because we're incapable of going ahead in this game, and that's it. Those for me are the two bigger issues outside of the nuances of the tactics of it.
Yeah, and I think so Dessers, we're going to just talk before we finish about McGregor. Why can't Rangers deal with McGregor and the second goal he conceded as well? Dessers made 44 pressures in the game, so he works hard. He's not fast, right? And I think this is, you see, even when Danilo played for Rangers under Clement, the Sparta Prague game at home, Rangers press probably looked the best it has done, because I think it's just, as you say, it's as simple as like Dessers works really hard, and I think at points he can be an intelligent presser, and he's really fit and he's really durable, because he played, you see that in the amount of minutes he played. But he's not like fast. He's not a fast, agile player over the first few yards, is he? You compare that to someone like McGregor, who is. And again, it's just that point of, okay, well, do Rangers have the players when someone like Tom Lawrence comes on again? Like, do they have the profiles in those positions to play this system? So let's look at a couple of examples of what Rangers are trying to do deeper in the pitch on Callum McGregor. This is what I think it should look like if you're Clement. So you can see Dessers is in front of McGregor. Diomande is behind them. All the other passing options, in theory, are marked up. Again, the rotations, instead of being a zonal system, I think the rotations make that more difficult, because you've got like Cherney's in front of his man. So the upside is he wins the ball if he can intercept that pass. If he doesn't intercept the pass, then Celtic are away in behind. This is what it should look like. But then continually what happened to me is when the ball went to the other side, Dessers just didn't get behind his man quick enough. Now, does Dessers work hard? Yes. Like 44 pressures in the game, that's a lot of work. I just think we've seen too many Old Firm games where he can't do this role. So what I think, Celtic didn't actually play this pass with Carter Vickers into playing the ball, to right back to get the ball into McGregor as the third man. But that's what Celtic did a lot of the time against Rangers man marking last season, was these little third man combinations to get the ball into McGregor. And the issue for me, Adam, is that, again, if you're going to do this system, you probably need two really fast, agile players who can go front to back. But too often it looked like this to me when it was the role of Diomande to track McGregor's runs into midfield, if you like, he was there. But when it was the opposite, he wasn't. But just before I throw it back over to you, the moment where Carter Vickers is running through into effectively the Rangers box from centre half, again, all the other Rangers midfielders have their men. That Carter Vickers isn't their man in this man-for-man system. You can see Dessers and Diomande and McGregor and Carter Vickers here. When the ball comes back to Carter Vickers, Diomande's went back over to be with McGregor. I don't know. I presume Dessers is just staying high up the pitch there. But then Diomande has to try and recover onto Carter Vickers. I thought that he went through a power of work. And again, it's not to say that Dessers does not work hard. He does. It's just, do Rangers have the pace in that front two? Is there much difference from last season to show that this man-marking approach is going to deal with Callum McGregor? Because it's not as simple as just saying, people say, just put someone on Callum McGregor and mark him at the game. That doesn't work, because he's an intelligent player, and then he's going to dismark someone else when he gets on the ball. Again, I think this comes back to the question of, can you employ a man-marking system when you're sitting deeper in the pitch? Or if you go more zonal, do you give yourself a better chance of not being pulled apart?
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think it's about suitability. I mentioned that 4-4-2 press. I don't like it with the players that we've got. I should clarify. Obviously, most teams that you've mentioned do that now. It is pretty standard. We see Celtic doing it. I don't like it with the players that we've got. So again, it comes back to my point about trying to minimise the weaknesses and accentuate what few strengths we have up front. Anyway, so it's about suitability and it's about quality in there as well. So yes, we could press the two if we have players that are physically capable, like you said, quick enough, clinical enough, they've got enough quality, they've got a bit of physicality about them that two central defenders and Callum McGregor would genuinely be quite wary of. I think that completely changes the game 100%. You only need to look at the other side of the pitch to understand how that works. So it's about suitability. Number of pressures for Dessers, fine. Is it useful? Is he?
Yeah, no,
Is he?
yeah.
So is he being baited into a pointless press that they just pass around and they're through and they're broken through, but it counts as one pressure? Fine, but it didn't do anything. I know pressures can also count for maybe blocking off passing lanes, etc. Yeah, okay, but they still pass through, like so they're still getting through. So he's blocked off a passing lane. Did it work? Did he block off a passing lane and they didn't get through? Did it block it off and he did get through? So yes, he works hard. That's absolutely fine. I would work hard if I was playing up there. That I wouldn't be very good at it, but it needs to be more. It needs to be more. We need to have. It comes back to dominating for me. Your man. Whether that is two trying to dominate the two in defence. Morelos would dominate three men at a time up there. Sometimes they'd be genuinely terrified of what he was going to do, that he could shove you off the ball, etc. We don't have that. We haven't had that for a couple of years now in this fixture. It's not something that we have. It makes a huge amount of difference. You look at guys like Aribo, Bassi, Helander, and Morelos, guys that can dominate their man physically, can play a bit too, and are decent on the ball. It's the same thing, but you get what I mean. It's an issue, and that's what I mean. That's why I would probably like us to be a little bit more difficult to beat in these games, rather than that high press, which then creates gaps because you've got players doing it that aren't quite capable of it. And I'm not saying we do have players that are capable of it, but again, comes back to manager suitability. Why are you trying to do something that it looks like some players can't do? Another issue, I know we're going to finish up, but I just wanted to mention that the whole thing about what I said earlier on, it feels like they've got a man extra everywhere. I think a big part of that is the wingers for me. We've spoken about when they get through, Dessers and Diamandi pressing. The wingers just aren't involved for me.
Because they're deep,
Not,
because they're so deep when the ball turns over. Do you mean?
yeah, well, when they have the ball, the wingers are not engaged enough. They're not in front of the fullbacks, so the fullback can always get the ball, and then always play it in. So they're not high enough up when Celtic have the ball in their half. Then when the ball comes through, they're too high up that they're not covering their fullbacks. So in essence, they become useless in this game, out of possession, because they're not able to give you the overload that you need to go and press. And then when Celtic do get through, they're caught ahead of the ball, and you see that disaster that you put up earlier on with acres and acres of space for Callum McGregor. So that's why we get caught between two ideals for me. If you want to press with a 3, fine. If you want to press with a 2, fine. But you need to make sure that your wingers are actually doing what they're supposed to do, or your wingers are doing something that is valuable. They need to be on their man. Fullbacks, they need to be on their man. They need to not let them get the ball, regardless of let them get the ball, and then they'll play it back the way. You need to not let them get the ball. You've seen how aggressive Celtic's press was in the early stages of it. So that for me is something that doesn't get talked about enough in these games. The wingers are completely ineffectual out of possession, which gives Celtic the advantage that they don't really need, to be honest, in the middle of the park.
Yeah. Okay, well, we'll leave it there. Hopefully, that's given a little bit more context as to some thoughts as to what Rangers are trying to do what Clermont's trying to do. Does he have the players for it? Why have we seen this time and time again? Because there's always a bigger picture, Adam, isn't there, of Clermont. It's not Clermont's fault that the squad building was in the situation it was when he got the job. But then how do you critique his individual use of said players? And we have hopefully made some semblance of sense over this 45-minute podcast. If you want to get these podcasts early and you're not a member of the Rangers Review YouTube channel, you can do so. $2.99 a month. You get around about 4 extra videos a week early. That includes Chris and Stevie's The Talking Point. That includes press conference reports, Derek's question and answer session, amongst other things as well. And remember, as you can see on the ticker below, subscribe to the Rangers Review for written content like this every day of the week. If you want to read the match analysis from Sunday's Old Firm, then I'll put the link in the description as well. But until next time, thanks to Adam for joining me. We'll try and
Thank you.
maybe revisit, I don't know, a new signing or something on the second week of the international break, Adam. Something to build, I don't know, a bit of expectation for after the international break. But we won't speak about that this week. But we will be back at some point next week, so do join us then. Until then, thanks for sticking with us if you have, and we'll speak to you soon. Bye for now.